Hello to everyone who's taken a moment to dive into my story. My name is Susan, and I'm about to share an experience from a year ago that significantly changed my perspective on love and relationships. At that time, I was eagerly looking forward to starting a beautiful life with Roger, my husband, who held a special place in my heart. Like many others, I believed in the perfection of our bond. Roger didn't have vast wealth, and his income was less than mine. However, this never bothered me because I valued our love more than financial equality. I was financially independent and found happiness in the affection he showed me. Our income difference meant I often covered most of our expenses. For instance, when we decided to move into a new house just before our wedding, I agreed to pay for 75% of the rent without hesitation. However, as time went by, it became clear that Roger saw my willingness to pay as an opportunity to take advantage of me. I can't say there weren't warning signs. It's just that I was too in love to acknowledge them. A major issue was Roger's expectation for me to financially support him continuously. Initially, I didn't mind assisting him, but his demands became increasingly unreasonable. When I started to refuse his requests, it was evident that he was upset, but I still didn't see it as a major problem. That changed when he made an absurd demand just before our wedding. He urgently asked for my credit card for wedding stuff, but became evasive and irritated when I inquired about the specifics. This behavior was alarming and out of character for the open and transparent relationship I thought we had. It made me rethink our dynamic and the future of our marriage. I stood my ground, insisting on knowing the reason behind his urgent need for my credit card. His response was dismissive and controlling, which only fueled my concerns. This incident was a turning point for me, highlighting the importance of mutual respect and transparency in a relationship. It was a painful but necessary lesson in recognizing the difference between love and exploitation. Roger's request caught me entirely off guard. He explained he needed my credit card to book his bachelor party trip to Fiji, including plane tickets and hotels for his groomsmen. It took a moment for the reality of his words to sink in. My disbelief must have been evident, as Roger's frustration grew when I hesitated, asking him to clarify why he thought I should finance this getaway. "Roger, this is absurd. Why should I pay for your bachelor trip to Fiji? Isn't that something your groomsmen should cover? If it's too expensive, pick another place," I countered, shocked by his boldness. He was adamant about Fiji being his dream destination and had promised to cover the expenses since his friends couldn't afford it. I stood my ground, refusing to use my resources for a trip I wouldn't even be a part of. This led to a significant argument, ending with Roger storming off to stay with his mother. Surprisingly, his mother, Kathleen, supported my stance and sent him back, albeit reluctantly. Following days of silence, I proposed a solution. Instead of his bachelor party in Fiji, we could spend our honeymoon there. Although Roger was initially resistant, fearing losing face with his friends, he eventually agreed to my compromise. I thought this resolved our conflict, and I was even looking forward to enjoying Fiji together as a married couple. Our wedding went beautifully, and we were prepared to leave for Fiji 2 weeks later. However, the day before our departure, I found Roger by the fireplace, my passport in his hand. Confused and concerned, I asked him what he was doing. He casually mentioned he had to take care of something before our trip. Before I could process the situation, Roger threw my passport into the fire. I was stunned, barely able to grasp the reality of my husband deliberately sabotaging our honeymoon plans. This act of betrayal was a dramatic turning point, far beyond what I could have ever anticipated. As the passport caught fire right before my eyes, I looked up at Roger in shock, only to find him smirking at my distress. My stunned expression seemed to amuse him greatly, prompting a loud laugh that echoed until I managed to voice out my disbelief. "Roger, what on earth have you just done? Did you just throw my passport into the fire on purpose?" "Are you blind, Susan?" "That's exactly what I did," he retorted dismissively, chilling me to the bone. "But why? Why would you do such a thing?" I stammered, my mind racing to comprehend the depth of his actions. It hit me then. The full weight of what he had done, deliberately destroying a crucial document, my passport, reducing it to ashes. I demanded to know his reasoning, to which his response cut deeper than the act itself. "What did you expect, Susan? I warned you about vetoing my bachelor party. Did you think I'd just let it slide?" His words were a slap, revealing a side of him I hadn't seen before. The absurdity of his justification left me speechless. He was punishing me for not financing his bachelor trip with what he now deemed our money, despite my clear discomfort with his demands. As he laid out his twisted logic for revenge, a cold realization washed over me. My heart struggled to accept that the man I married could harbor such spite. "And how does burning my passport serve you, Roger? What do you gain from this?" I asked, bewildered by his pettiness. His next words were a gut punch, revealing his ultimate betrayal. "I'm going to Fiji, Susan, without you." His declaration that what was meant to be our honeymoon would now be his solo escape left me reeling. The absurdity and cruelty of his actions painted a clear picture of the man I had married, a realization that was as devastating as it was enlightening. Roger's response to my disbelief was a laugh that chilled me to the core, a laugh so devoid of warmth it seemed to come from a stranger. It was a revelation of a side of him I had never seen before, one that filled me with revulsion. He seemed entirely unaffected by my shock, casually mentioning how the trip was indeed meant for us both, but with my passport now destroyed, I obviously couldn't join him. "Because of this senseless act, we're going to lose all the money we spent on the honeymoon," I argued, trying to make him see reason. Yet he was unfazed, smugly stating that while I couldn't go, nothing was stopping him. He twisted the knife further by suggesting he was taking this trip as a belated bachelor's party, leaving me behind to ponder my actions. His indifference was staggering. "You're seriously planning to go without me? To our honeymoon?" I pressed, hoping for some sign of remorse. But he coldly justified his decision as a lesson for me, claiming I had made him choose between his bachelor party and our honeymoon. He ended the conversation abruptly, announcing his early flight and dismissing me as he went upstairs. Left alone with my thoughts, the gravity of the situation sank in. Betrayal and disbelief gave way to tears as I recognized the signs of control and abuse I had once observed in my own family. It was a painful echo of the past I never wanted to repeat. I knew I couldn't let this go unchallenged, clinging to a faint hope that Roger would realize his mistake and seek forgiveness. I was even willing to consider couples counseling, such was the depth of my love for him. However, that hope was shattered the next morning as Roger descended with his bags packed, ready to leave for the airport without a backward glance. My heart broke watching my marriage crumble while he left for the airport, leaving me behind in a flood of tears. The next day was a blur of sorrow, only interrupted when Kathleen, my mother-in-law, called, inquiring about our connecting flight to Malaysia, unaware of the turmoil. The confusion in her voice when I explained I hadn't gone on the trip hinted at the disconnect Roger had created, not just between us but within our families. This conversation only deepened the realization of the immense gap that had formed in what was supposed to be a new chapter of unity and love. Receiving a message from Roger that he had boarded the plane without a hitch brought everything crashing down once more, and I found myself overwhelmed, tears streaming as I attempted to convey the situation to Kathleen. My distress was so palpable that Kathleen quickly ended the call and made her way to my house. Upon arrival, her shock at seeing me in such a state was evident. She offered comfort and, after a while, demanded to know why I hadn't accompanied Roger on our honeymoon. "Roger isn't lying, Kathleen. He did go on the trip, but he left me behind," I managed to explain through tears. The idea that this was meant to be our honeymoon but had turned into something else entirely left Kathleen both appalled and furious. She couldn't believe what Roger had done and was ready to confront him with the full force of her anger. After calming me down, Kathleen stressed the importance of not letting Roger off the hook for his egregious actions, highlighting the twisted nature of his behavior. Acknowledging the severity of the situation, I shared with Kathleen my doubts about the future of my marriage to Roger. The man I had married seemed like a stranger to me now, one capable of such vindictive acts. Kathleen, equally disappointed, lamented her role in how Roger had turned out, declaring him a lost cause. Her unequivocal support in those moments was invaluable to me, affirming that I wasn't alone in recognizing the extremity of Roger's behavior. Our discussions about Roger's past behaviors revealed a pattern of mooching, an exploitation that had only worsened over the years, painting a picture of a man consumed by entitlement and selfishness. This realization fueled our resolve to take action, to teach Roger a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. With Kathleen's help, we put a plan into motion over the next 5 days, aiming to give Roger a taste of his own medicine. Our efforts culminated in a moment of reckoning for Roger. When we finally confronted him over a video call, his initial smugness was palpable, boasting about how the trip was everything he had ever wanted. Keeping my composure, I greeted him, masking the storm of emotions within me. His enthusiastic response about enjoying his solo honeymoon only served to remind me of the necessity of our plan. The actions we had taken were not just about retribution, they were about setting boundaries and asserting my self-worth against someone who had shown no regard for me or our marriage. Roger's boast about enjoying his trip despite missing his friends swiftly shifted gears when I hinted at the impending end of our marriage. The prospect of losing his comfortable lifestyle seemed to strike a chord, his previously jovial demeanor giving way to panic. Attempting to deflect, he argued that ending our marriage over a trip was absurd, not recognizing the irony in his decision to prioritize the trip over our relationship. "I'm doing you a favor, Roger. Since you seem to prefer bachelor trips, I'm giving you the freedom to enjoy them indefinitely," I said, delivering a blow to his expectations of a continuous free ride on my finances. Roger's confusion was palpably as I laid out the reality of his situation. He had taken for granted that he could use my resources for his self-indulgent escape without considering the consequences. His assurance that his return flights were secured did little to salvage his predicament once I informed him that all expenses were charged to my credit card, and with our marriage ending, I had no inclination to fund his return. The color drained from his face as he realized I wasn't bluffing. The thought of being stranded without access to my financial support was a reality he hadn't anticipated. His protests and disbelief turned to desperation as he grasped the severity of his situation. "Oh, Roger, you seem to misunderstand. I'm not just planning to do this, I've already initiated the process. I've moved out and begun the annulment process. Our marriage and your free ride are over," I informed him, dismantling any hope he harbored of a simple resolution. Roger's pleas for a chance to discuss the matter in person, even offering to cut his trip short, were met with my resolve. I had made my decision, and no last-minute promises could undo the betrayal and disregard he had shown. This was more than just about a trip. It was about respect, trust, and the realization that I deserved better than what Roger was willing to offer. Roger's plea for a chance to rectify his mistakes fell on deaf ears. His actions from the moment he embarked on that ill-conceived vacation demonstrated a blatant disregard for our marriage. The final straw was his deliberate act of destroying my passport, a symbol of his utter disrespect for me and the life we were supposed to build together. "This marriage was over the moment you decided to burn my passport, Roger. You've made your choices, and now you must live with them," I stated, making it clear there was no turning back. Without hesitation, I ended the call, proceeding to cancel all bookings made with my credit card. The screenshots of the cancellation confirmations were sent directly to Roger, who oscillated between insults and pleas, unable to comprehend the gravity of his situation. I blocked his number, severing the last line of communication, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions alone. It took Roger a full day to return, having exhausted his funds on frivolous expenses. Desperate, he was forced to borrow money for his flight home, a stark reminder of his reliance on others' generosity. Attempts to reach out to Kathleen were futile. She, like me, had chosen to distance herself from his manipulative tactics. Roger's surprise was palpable when he found me residing with Kathleen, his mother. His confusion only deepened as Kathleen coldly questioned the justification of his actions, siding with me over her son. Roger's attempts to portray himself as the victim were pathetic, especially in light of the truth. Kathleen, fully aware of the extent of his betrayal, offered no sympathy, instead offering me refuge and support. The dynamic in Kathleen's living room, with me, witnessing Kathleen's unequivocal support, was a powerful moment. Roger's narrative of betrayal, blaming me for his predicament, was a desperate attempt to evade responsibility. However, the solidarity between Kathleen and me was unbreakable, a testament to the shared recognition of Roger's true character. Roger's plea to his mother Kathleen for financial assistance was met with a stern rebuke, highlighting the extent of his misplaced entitlement. "Roger, since when did Susan become your bank? It's appalling how you've acted, and now you expect sympathy?" Kathleen expressed her disappointment and refusal to enable his behavior further. This moment marked a significant turning point as Roger faced the harsh reality of his actions and their consequences. Finding himself in a financial bind, With a looming loan and no means to cover rent, Roger's situation became dire. His previous lifestyle, heavily subsidized by exploiting relationships, was crumbling. Faced with the magnitude of his predicament, Roger desperately sought Kathleen's help, only to be firmly rejected. This rejection served as a stark wake-up call, stripping away any illusions of entitlement and forcing him to confront the outcomes of his decisions head-on. Our coordinated stand against Roger's manipulative tactics served as a poignant lesson. Despite his attempts to regain sympathy and support from both Kathleen and me, his actions had irrevocably damaged our trust and goodwill. Kathleen's decision to eject him from her home underscored a collective resolve to no longer tolerate his selfish behavior. The fallout from Roger's actions led to an annulment of our marriage, a legal acknowledgement of the brief and tumultuous union. This legal proceeding, expedited by the evidence of Roger's reckless behavior with my passport, was a formal closure to a chapter marked by exploitation and disrespect. Despite the annulment, Roger's attempts at reconciliation persisted, oblivious to the profound impact of his actions. His once enviable social life dissolved as friends distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with someone so blatantly self-serving. This isolation was a testament to the consequences of his actions, leaving him estranged from both friends and family. 2 years has passed since these events unfolded, with Kathleen maintaining her stance of tough love towards Roger. This period of enforced independence appears to be a crucial step in addressing his deeply ingrained sense of entitlement. For me, this experience has been a journey of self-discovery and affirmation of my worth, firmly closing the door on a past marked by manipulation and opening a new chapter of self-reliance and empowerment.